pulls this together. That's not a scale. This clearly isn't a scalable model, and this looks like it should be scalable, but it's not. And this is really, you get to predictable success. That's your scalable model, because this, you can add as many of these as you want, and you can make this as big as you want, and there's nowhere for stuff to fall between. Now, I realize that's all a little bit, you know, up there, but that's essentially what's going on. Makes sense. So, what I thought I would do, as I say, I'm going to see if I can find the page that. What you've got here actually is, oh look, there's everything I just did. I must have thought of that before. So I'm going to talk you through pages 15, 16, and 17 today. It all comes together in page 14, but in a blinding flash of the stunningly counterintuitive. Let's not start with it, even though it's the first page. What you've got here, by the way, is I think all of the workbook that I use for the one-day workshops that I use. So we're just going to push into a small part. What I'd like to share with you are where the two main interventions tend to happen in any organization as it's growing. There really is very few justifiable reasons for intervening with in any way. You know, in my world as a consultant with a business in early struggle, you just want to tell them what they need to do and let them get on with it. The last thing they needed to be doing is spending money with consultants, and very few of them, thankfully, most of them have the wit not to do that. And I don't tend to get a lot of calls from organizations that are in fun, and why would you? Who's going to call for an outside intervention when you're having fun? One of the things I do get asked at workshops like this quite a lot is, hey, from what I hear you telling me, we are definitely at fun, what should I be doing? And the answer is, you know, lie back and enjoy it. Take it seriously. Maybe keep your ear open for what I'm about to show you, so that you might be a little bit ahead of the game. But one of the things that you really can't do is you can't start working here to avoid or do anything really different in terms of getting through fun. You can only start working here when the pain begins to be felt, because nobody will understand why you're trying to do what you're doing if you try to do it here. You start trying to introduce systems and processes too early, everybody else is going to say, what are you drinking? We don't, you see what I'm saying? It's like putting a massive overcoat on a 3-year-old. You know, it's just not, doesn't work. Must get a better metaphor for that. Not a lot of need to interfere too much here, and people in the big rut don't call because why? They've lost the power to self-diagnose. They're comfortable where they are. So the places that I get, and you know, as organizations where you're working, where often it's helpful to try to optimize, by which I mean typically at least minimize, but if even better, make less painful the shift through whitewater and travel. So I want to just talk you through the sets of activities that I see most organizations go through. Let me start here with whitewater. And I think I've painted them laterally here, but I'm going to, for sake of size, do them vertically. Yeah. I'm not talking here on page 15. By the way, if you haven't got a copy of this, if we've run out of copies, this is not included in the pack that you'll get when you click the download button on the website. Go to predictablesuccess.com, there's a red strip at the top, you click that, you'll get an annotated set of stuff from what I did there, but it's not this. If you don't have this and you really want this, just give me a card afterwards and I'll make sure we email it to you. Here's what I see most organizations need to work at, and as I said to you, this covers about 60 to 70% of the commonalities to all organizations. Excuse me. The first thing, and as I say, I'm going to turn this from here to here. The first thing, as I've already mentioned, is a need to take a look at the org chart. Now, what I mean by that is not necessarily just the boxes. Boxes are part of it. Typically, if they exist at all at this stage, they're either chicken scratchings or they're a statement, a legacy statement of seniority and historicity and status. They tend not to have a lot to do with what they need to be about, which is how you make decisions. That's what an org chart needs to become, a machine for decision making. That's what an org chart is. It doesn't need to be anything else. And it typically isn't that by this stage. It may be many things, but it isn't that. And I'm not going to have time in the time I have available to work through all of the detail of what this literally means. But typically it means stripping down job roles and re-evaluating what the individual in each key role actually does and for whom. And usually the concept of the internal customer begins to gain importance for the first time in the organization at this stage. It's usually around about here in Whitewater, and early Whitewater, that we begin to realize that we need to be able to service our internal customers as well as we've been servicing historically our external customers. In fun, there's no concept of the internal customer. We're all just a bunch of people. You know, like, have you ever watched the kids, you know, like an 8-year-old, 6-year-old bunch of kids playing soccer? You call it flop ball, where they all just run around together, wherever the ball is. Everybody is there. Nobody's in any positions. We're just all running after the ball. There's this cloud of dust where things are happening. And maybe it'll get up towards the goal and maybe it won't. Well, fun's a little bit like that. It's only as you hit Whitewater that we begin to understand we've got to actually get into position to handle what's happening. And we've got to, you know, mark our own territory and work with it. So we've got to strip down the job specifications, rewrite those, typically discover for the first time who our internal customer is. So who do I, in purchasing, have as my main internal customer, and what's the contract? Who do I in IT have as my internal customer, and what's my contract to them? What am I saying I will deliver? It's mundane, but it's highly important and very, very powerful. And it's brain-numbing to do. One of the key indicators of how fast you'll get through fun and how well you get through fun is the capacity for senior management to take pay. If you can't sit in and make it happen and do the hard work that I'm talking about here, you'll just get into Whitewater and, you know, the wheels will spin for maybe 2-3 years and you'll suffer that pain and won't accelerate at the other end. But doing this sort of stuff is painful. So we do the org chart, and one of the things that comes out of it, typically in my experience, almost immediately, is the need to learn what I call lateral management. What this means briefly is that by the time we've got to Whitewater, anybody who is a manager has been appointed a manager because of their ability to manage vertically. They are sales managers or admin managers or whatever because they manage their teams well. And that's their primary locus, that's their primary focus of attention, that's where they get their brownie points. In Whitewater, when we want to move into predictable success, the situation shifts where there are no longer any brownie points for managing your team vertically. That's accepted. If you can't manage your team vertically, you don't get to come to the table. That's just the price of entry. What the brownie points come from is your ability to manage laterally with your fellow managers. The ability to link arms with peer managers and to see them, and this is the tough point for many managers, is to actually see them as your primary responsibility and your vertical team your secondary responsibility. And it's not a question of or, it's a question of and. You don't get away with not having the same level of responsibility for your vertical team. It's just it's now even more important that you are able to link arms and perform what I call cabinet management. In other words, we get in a room, we fight and argue and put blood on the walls, but when we make a decision, we walk out and jointly support it. In Whitewater, typically what's happening is everybody's managing vertically very well, and they're all nicey-nicey to each other when they get in a room, but when they get outside, it's all, you see that decision, that was Joanne's decision, I would never have supported that, I've always thought that stunk. And that doesn't help trying to get through to predictable success. So the ability to learn lateral management, we have a few seats at the front if you're feeling really, you know, brave and you know, you don't mind being sharp, as I said. The next aspect of this that completes this part of it is that we usually need to break through Whitewater into predictable success to, we'll use shorthand here, to relearn how to work in cross-functional teams. And I'm just talking through here. for that is in fun we all work naturally cross-functionally. There's no way you can't. It's a tight, tiny team and we're all within visible range of each other and we just do things together. So it's hard not to work cross-functionally. In Whitewater, when we've hit complexity, we actually have to learn mechanically how to work cross-functionally because the business has become more complex. We're in silos and in groups. We've got the ops group, we've got the admin group, we've got the sales group. They've been sliding apart for a while. And so we've got to put training wheels on. And that means for a period of time, I don't recommend it as a prolonged thing, but for a period of time we're going to put people in a room, give them a materially important issue that we have, pull them from throughout the organization, and reteach them how to work cross-functionally. And help them realize that this is a different type of cross-functionality than they had before. The cross-functionality you have in fun is entirely intuitive and natural and doesn't require breaching any operating or reporting lines. Cross-functionality in Whitewater, as we're moving into predictable success, means you've got to actually work hard. You've got to communicate with people who, unless you tell them things, won't hear it. Back in fun, a piece of data was available to everybody. You want a piece of business, everybody could tell, because the boss was cheering around like crazy and throwing candy floss at us. When you try to move into predictable success, you've got to relearn how that happens. And as that happens over time, you can extend this. And I'm going to use an awfully degraded word here, but it's still very important. The key thing is that you don't start this process by betting the ranch, putting 4 or 5 people in a room and asking them to solve the business's biggest key problem. You start by giving them issues that are discrete, maybe a new IT system, or maybe we're redoing the logo or something like that, which you've got to do, which is important, but which if you get wrong isn't going to screw the business, because we're still relearning how to work cross-functionally. And then you build that over time by giving folks more and more power to make real decisions. And that means hidden in here is relearning delegation. Relearning what it's really like to give people the ability not just make decisions, but to follow through and implement them. And only when we do that can we do the thing that most people actually start with. And this is the biggest single chronological mistake I see happen, is that when the business hits Whitewater, the thing that worries senior management most is that there's a sense that there's a breaking down of that cohesion in all of the rest of the workforce. The strong alignment and the ability we all had to be pulling in the right direction tends to get fragmented very early on in Whitewater. People lose engagement because they realize that you've lost some sense of your direction because the business isn't going as clearly where it should be going and things are rocking. They step back a little bit and they're not just as gung-ho, they're not going the extra mile, they're not really joining in, and they can't see the future. If you can't see it, believe me, they can't see it. And in Whitewater, that's essentially what happens, is we lose sight of the future. Now what I see happens all the time is senior management steps in and tries to make this happen. The first thing they do is have rah-rahs. We get together, we redo the mission statement. There's not a recognition here. We try to redo the mission statement, or we have a big event, or we get everybody into the cafeteria and the boss stands on the table and we give people the thing, the thing. Everybody's got a thing that they can give you, they pull it out if they need to, and really, it doesn't work. It works for a very short period of time. The reason it won't work here is because everybody goes back and sees that we still haven't got a machine for decision making. Senior managers aren't even pulling together, and I'm not being included in any real decision making. And so this all then just falls away. What I've discovered very painfully over many, many years is this chronology is really important. You can't just take these parts and grab one or two and do them. You've got to follow the flow. You've got to get the machine for decision. Now, I'm not saying that every organization needs all of these, but you've got to go check them all. Maybe you go and you find, okay, well, we need to tweak that a little bit, but actually these folks are really good at working together, for whatever reason. Like they're 7 sons of a 7th son or something like that, so they've got psychic power, and they communicate psychically. Oh, that hasn't actually happened. Okay, that's never happened. That was just a poor example. But maybe you find we don't need to do much here, but we've got to work on that, we've got to work on this. The chronology, the choreography, if you will, of working down here is really important. And only by doing those 5 things will the single most important thing happen, which is people get realigned once. Here we might look at the mission statement. We would look at the mission statement. It may need to be redone entirely, mission, vision, and values.